From the headquarters of FtS English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. In Colombia, illegal armed organizations have forced families to leave several villages in Antioquia and Cordoba. This is according to human rights defender Andres Chica, these populations. He says the armed groups are seizing territory to use for drug trafficking. Some of the families have arrived at a humanitarian camp, but some are being held by the criminals. Campesinos are demanding that humanitarian organizations like the International Red Cross assist those forced to flee. This is what Chica had to say about this humanitarian emergency during a radio interview.
Yesterday, while they were going down the sidewalks near Rio Sucio, they were detained by a clan of Golfo members, which thought some of them had been part of the FARC. And now they recognize themselves as the new Front 18. So now we have a much more difficult scenario. For the people who have been expelled by criminal actors, they have to travel 2 hours by mule. And there they have other criminals that advise them not to leave those territories. And by contrast, there is the invisibility, or the almost null presence of military forces to reestablish order and freedom in this region of the country.
In Venezuela, electricity has almost completely returned to the capital city of Caracas after an outage was reported on Monday. People are returning to their regular activities and the situation has remained calm. Airports are functioning normally and emergency plans have been activated. Communications Minister Jorge Rodriguez says this latest outage is the result of yet another sabotage, this time with a fire against the country's main hydroelectric plant. Our correspondent in Caracas, Leonel Retamal, has been out to see how services are being restored.
Here in the east of Caracas, you can see that the situation is calm and there are no long lines of cars. The state oil company PDVSA said on Twitter that the supply of gasoline is now completely normal because rumors had been circulating of possible gas shortages. The other important news is the images that the Minister of Communication posted showing the damage suffered by the Guri generating plant as a result of the fire caused on Monday, which was what led, of course, to this massive electricity outage in Caracas and other parts of the country. From around midday, the electricity began to come back on, and now many parts of the city have power. So the efforts are now concentrating on stabilizing that supply so that the metro train system can begin running again.
We thank Leonel for that report. The relatives of the 3 Ecuadorian journalists kidnapped and killed at the border with Colombia are once again demanding answers 1 year after the crime. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has more.
Standing outside the government palace in Quito with banners and photographs, the relatives of Comercio newspaper team kidnapped and murdered on the northern border with Colombia are once again demanding to know the truth about the deaths of their family members.
For the relatives, it is very difficult to face this. We will not stop, and we will fight until we know the truth about this case and get justice.
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is carrying out an investigation into the kidnappings and murders of driver Efraín Segarra, journalist Javier Ortega, and photographer Paul Rivas. The families went to international organizations due to the silence from the government.
The authorities currently in office have used the policy of silence in response to our actions. Yesterday, they provided us with additional information on the case because they know a year has passed, and today we will talk with the media. We decided to review with our lawyers what has led to the policy of silence regarding the death of Paul, Javier, and Efraín.
A year after the deaths of the Comercio newspaper team, their loved ones didn't know what really happened until now. They say they will take any measures necessary to find the truth. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
Israeli forces have once again launched airstrikes in Gaza. This comes after Israel claims rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel. At the same time, Israel has sent additional forces to Gaza's border, saying it has reserved the right to carry out more attacks on the Strip. All this follows a ceasefire brokered by Egypt following cross-border fighting that began on Monday. Earlier, hundreds of people rallied in the Golan Heights against the U.S. decision to recognize the region as Israeli territory. Demonstrators gathered in front of the governor's building in the city of Bath. Syrian and Palestinian protesters waved flags, and demonstrators also held banners reading "Golan is Syria." And the European members of the United Nations Security Council have said they don't recognize Israel's sovereignty over this territory. They described this annexation as illegal and warned about the consequences this could bring to the region after the U.S. recognition.
Our position on the status of the Golan Heights is well known, and we would like to make it clear that this position has not changed. In line with international law and relevant Security Council resolutions, notably Resolution 242 and 497, we do not recognize Israel's sovereignty over the territories occupied by Israel since June 1967, including the Golan Heights, and we do not consider them to be part of the territory of the State of Israel. Annexation of territory by force is prohibited under international law. Any declaration of a unilateral border change goes against the foundation of the rules-based international order and the UN Charter. We raise our strong concerns about the broader consequences of recognizing illegal annexation and also about the broader regional consequences.
Several countries have sharply criticized U.S. President Donald Trump for violating international law when he signed a decree recognizing Israel's sovereignty on the Golan Heights. It's also been described as an all-out aggression against Syria.
Syria is one of several countries which have strongly criticized Trump's order. International organizations have also spoken out against the move. They say it proves that Washington has ignored the UN Charter, international law, and UN Security Council resolutions.
Trump has no power to say that Golan Heights belongs to Israel, to the Zionists. No one has. This decision is a violation of the international law and an aggression against the sovereignty of Syria and the whole Arab world. We, the Iraqi people, as all the Arab people, are rejecting this decision made by Trump.
The government and the people of Syria have condemned Trump's order. They say they will continue the struggle to liberate the occupied region.
This decision will not have any legal effect, and this is just a gift to the Israeli Prime Minister ahead of the elections. After defeating terrorism, the Syrian people will start the battle to liberate the Golan and the occupied Palestine. This is the message by the Syrian people, the government, and the army.
Zionism is behind the military occupation in the Golan. Tel Aviv is getting ready for a potential response from the Syrian army and its allies in the bloc of resistance against the Israeli occupation.
This decision by Trump cannot change the history of the occupied Golan. We insist that it will be liberated soon, as well as all the Arab people, especially the Syrian and the Palestinian people. We won't sit back. We will defend our history and our right to reach victory.
The Golan Heights are located in the southwest of Syria, spanning 1,800 kilometers. It borders Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan. The area was captured from Syria and occupied by Israel during the Six-Day War. Israel unilaterally annexed the Golan Heights in 1981. According to Damascus, the moves made by Israel, supported by the US, have no legal effect, so the territory will be liberated sooner than later.
The army chief in Algeria has called for the presidency to be vacated. Lieutenant General Gaed Salah says the people's demands regarding President Abdelaziz Bouteflika are valid. Salah cited Article 102 of the Constitution, which allows the Constitutional Council to declare if the president is unfit to rule. This follows a month of mass protests against President Bouteflika. The veteran UN diplomat Lakhdar Brahimini is set to lead talks on Algeria's political future. South Africa's governing party, the African National Congress, has reaffirmed its solidarity with the people of Western Sahara. The party's chairperson for foreign relations said it is time all progressive organizations supported the Western Sahara's right to self-determination. She added that the party will redouble the efforts to end Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara.
What we can do to aid them in advancing their cause.
And Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza is in South Africa taking part in the Western Sahara Solidarity Conference. He has pledged his government will support the people of the Western Sahara in their quest for independence. The Western Sahara, also known as the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, is the only African country still under colonization by fellow continental nation Morocco since 1975.
Dear brothers and sisters, it's an honor to be here attending the invitation extended by the Southern Africa Development Community to take part in this Solidarity Conference on Western Sahara. This is a national cause for Venezuela. 56 years ago, the Special Committee of the United Nations on Decolonization declared Western Sahara as a non-self-governing territory, and in 1983, in line with principles and ideals of self-determination, Venezuela recognized the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. Since then, and up to date, Venezuela has worked together with the international community in order to contribute to reach a just, lasting, acceptable political solution for the parties, which provides for the self-determination of the people from Western Sahara, in accordance with the purposes and principles enshrined in the UN Charter and within the framework of the mandates of such organization.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. More CARICOM heads of government are criticizing the decision of 5 Caribbean leaders to hold talks with the U.S. president. Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister Gaston Brown has called his Caribbean counterparts who attended the meeting weak-minded. In a Facebook post, Brown said they allowed themselves to be treated like servants. He said CARICOM must continue its position by standing on the principle without inducements or fears of reprisals. Brown's comments follow St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves' criticism of Jamaica, the Bahamas, Haiti, St. Lucia, and the Dominican Republic. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Brown has reiterated CARICOM's non-intervention policy on Venezuela.
If it wasn't for the strong position of CARICOM to stand in principle, the principles of non-interference, non-intervention, respecting the sovereignty of states, I guarantee you military action would have been taken in Venezuela already, and there would have been dire consequences for Caribbean people.
The United States has come under fire for its decision to increase political and economic pressure on Cuba. The Organization of Eastern Caribbean States is now calling on the U.S. president to lift the decades-old blockade on Cuba. Leaders criticize the U.S. government's decision to lift the suspension of Article 3 of the Helms-Burton Act for 30 days, from March 19th to April 17th. This makes it possible for lawsuits to be filed against Cuban entities by U.S. claimants, whose properties were seized by the state during the Cuban Revolution. Authorities in Jamaica have clamped down on illicit fuel operations in communities near Petrojam. Petrojam is an oil refinery jointly owned by Petróleos de Venezuela's PDVSA and Jamaica's Petroleum Corporation. While the authorities did not find illegal connections to Petrojam's 23 underwater pipelines, they discovered other illegal fuel operations on land.
But they also, Mr. Speaker, with the police, conducted various operations in and around the communities around Petrojam, and they have discovered and dismantled various illegal fuel operations. So, Mr. Speaker, we have taken these actions.
Regarding the future of Petrojam, Holmes says the newborn has taken all steps to ensure that good governance practices are in place at the refinery.
they have ensured a close monitoring of oil losses. International benchmarks for oil loss goes up to 0.9%. Petrojam's own internal target is 0.4. On average, since April 2018, Petrojam has been operating at 0.2% average oil loss, which is well within Petrojam's own target.
In Brazil, Bolsonaro's government says it will close the indigenous health system run by the Ministry of Health. He is transferring the responsibilities to the municipalities in Brasilia. The indigenous people are marching against the decision. They have been outside the Ministry of Health since early this morning. Mobilizations take place in the country since yesterday. Colombian Senator Feliciano Valencia has denounced the private media's campaign of hate against indigenous people. Valencia posted this video of the ongoing Minga taking place in the Cauca region. He says the private media is generating a sense of hatred for the Minga by focusing on their obstruction of the Pan-American highway instead of focusing on their demands. Valencia also says the government should not stigmatize people who are demanding compliance with agreements signed with previous administrations. According to Valencia, since President Iván Duque took office, there have been 57 deaths of indigenous people in the department of Chocó. These brought the communities together to look for solutions to the problems. Another group of more than 2,400 people from countries of Central America, the Caribbean, and Africa seek to reach the U.S. border. The Mesoamerican Migrant Movement criticized police actions in its Twitter account, saying, quote, "As a criminal act, we qualify the actions of the authorities of Chiapas for preventing migrant women and children from entering the city to stock up on food after walking for hours under the sun." Part of Peru's Amazon region are underwater following heavy rains. More than 30,000 people have been affected by floods and at least 51 have died. The worst hit areas are Iquitos, Huánuco, and Oxapamba. Wet weather is in the forecast until next week. To the end of the world and back, one Argentinian motorcyclist decided to bring his dog on a road adventure. Wearing goggles, Pocho, the dog, sits comfortably in his special seat behind his owner, Dardo Campostrini. Originally meant to be just a quick ride, the unlikely duo has been on the road for over a month now. They have traveled through Argentina, Patagonia, and are currently riding around the southern tip of Chile. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands of people have rallied in the capital of Yemen to mark the 4th anniversary of the civil war. People marched in Sana'a waving the national flag and chanted slogans against Saudi Arabia, the U.S., and Israel. Protesters also painted their faces with the flag colors and danced holding their assault rifles and traditional daggers. The war displaced over 2 million people and drove the country to the verge of famine. Tens of thousands have died since the March 2015 conflict between the Houthis and the Saudi coalition.
This is a message to the world that at the start of the 5th year, Yemenis will be stronger. At the start of the 5th year, there will be many messages sent by the Yemeni people, and that includes a message that the Yemeni resistance will be even greater in the 5th year. The 5th year will be the year of military, security, and economic achievements.
South Africa labor and political movements have continued extending solidarity to the government of Venezuela. Members of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa and the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party have picketed in front of the U.S. consulate in the city of Cape Town. They're calling for an end to U.S. attempts to overthrow Venezuela's democratically elected government. The strike comes less than 2 weeks after another picket was held in front of the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria. Members of NUMSA have also gone on strike at the country's largest manufacturer of construction materials over alleged racism. We spoke with South African researcher and activist David Van Wyk, who says the nationalization of the country's means of production is the only effective way to fight widespread abuse of workers' rights.
Well, I think the way to end racism in the workplace is actually to try and begin to nationalize the wealth and resources of South Africa and to put it under the control of South Africans rather than under the control of international corporations and so on. The international corporations behave with impunity with regard to the wealth of this country and with regard to evading taxes and invoice fraud and so on.
The son of former South African President Jacob Zuma has pleaded not guilty to manslaughter related to a fatal car crash in 2014. Durasani Zuma said the accident, in which 2 people died, was unintentional. His defense is that he hit a pool of water and lost control of his vehicle. He initially faced 2 charges of culpable homicide and 1 count of negligent driving. One of the culpable homicide charges will be withdrawn. The United Nations has sent a team to Mali in response to the brutal massacre that occurred over the weekend. 10 human rights officers, a child protection officer, and 2 crime scene investigators went to the Mopti region to investigate Saturday's attack. The UN Rights Office said the massacre of more than 150 people this weekend marks a significant surge of killings. These attacks have led to about 600 deaths of women, children, and men, as well as thousands of displaced people since March 2018.
Spike in killings in the attack in Ogusagu in the Mopti region in central Mali is the latest in a series of assaults and a cycle of violence that has resulted in some 600 deaths of women, children, and men, as well as thousands of displaced people since March 2018. So 600 people have been killed in a year over the past 12 months in the Mopti region alone.
Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have pledged to end conflict between the 2 countries and work together for peace. Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame made the announcement at the ongoing Africa CEO Forum in Kigali. The 2 neighbors have had a fractious relationship since the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Last year, heavy fighting broke out between the Rwandan and Congolese military in troubled Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo after an incursion by Rwandan troops.
We will not move towards an escalation of violence between our 2 countries. In any case, the Democratic Republic of Congo is there. It offers its assistance in the event of certain difficulties that we could eventually overcome, because our vision is to build bridges between us and not walls.
If we can't work together as brothers, sisters, as friends, we can decide to give each other peace and forget about what we have to do together, but above all, avoid quarrels that may just be destructive.
The Thai Prime Minister has said he is not involved in the process of forming the new government. This comes after the Pro-Junta Palang Pracharat party nominated Chan Ocha to be the next Prime Minister. But it is still unclear how many seats the parties would have in the House of Representatives.
The country has to move forward. I would not have allowed this election to happen if I had wanted to extend my power. Do you understand what I mean? All mechanisms should be aligned to the Constitution, which was voted by the people in the referendum. We must respect the people's voice.
A drag queen has entered politics in Thailand for the first time. Known as Natalia Pliakam in his drag persona, is set to promote LGBTI rights and gender equality in a country where queer people still face discrimination. Pliakam signed up as a member of the Palang Thong Thing Thai party and says that change may come slowly, but LGBTI acceptance is growing.
I think the society is more open-minded, and I want to break people's bias on genders. I want to prove that I can join politics even though my gender is different, because it is in my rights as a Thai citizen.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.